And I am preparing. And let's see who all's in here. Boom. Hello and welcome. This episode will probably take a good bit longer than average because I will be turning a person into a turtle, so to speak. Not like with any kind of woody, but more along the lines of I'll be Carlton. What are you doing, Carlton? You know better. Every time I start the broadcast, he has to come over. Isn't that right? Is that what you're doing? You're trying to interrupt the broadcast? Come on, Fussbud, I gotta put you down. When they do that, can you bear to put them down? Really? Alright, get on down, Fussbud. Anyway, like I was trying to say, I'm going to be making a Tortle. And I'll be showing people who are regulars how to add what's called a either a morph or a blend shape for new races, new specific proportions, or if you want to do just minor detail work, specific characters to the files that I have, available. Pardon me for the hiccups. So what's going to happen is I'm going to be just doing just your basic stuffs. And I will be, as soon as I see a sign from my guest, we'll probably go ahead and get started. I would like to note, however, that we are starting right now. Well, not right now. Well, actually, yeah, kind of right now. There's a challenge going on called Mini-Vember. Mini-Vember, I'll repeat this near the end of the show. Mini-Vember is basically, it's a sculpting challenge to sculpt a printable 3D miniature, you know, just like these guys. This, by the way, was the Sunday Patreon sculpt. It's a fighter mage. And there will be given a challenge with race, class, armor, primary weapon, and background. Just a little bit of flavor. And you sculpt whatever figure you feel fits that description. And it's just for fun. It's to practice so that we can all get better at sculpting. Now, there is... Aha! Excellent, Kim. Well, I believe that Darky Flame is the person who's got this Tortle. Am I correct? And while I'm waiting on YouTube lag, this is the link to the Mini-Vember page. Kamiko the Tortle. Okay. So, what's going to happen? I'm first going to show how to turn him into a Tortle. Now, the thing is, the basic figure will actually be without the shell. The shell is going to be an add-on piece. But you'll at least be able to see how I do these morphs. Now, as with the previous, I have a reference picture that was sent as the primary suggested appearance for the character. And I do believe I have it in here. I may not. Oh, no, I don't have it in here. I have to save it from Facebook. So, view image, save image as, and then bring it into this directory. Tortle. Technically, it's a female tortle, but because we're mammals and we can't tell the difference, because of the proportion of shoulder to hip, I'll be using the base male geometry. Also, as for the colors that you want, that's going to be on the paint side, but I'm going to try and sculpt the scales, the shells that looks as much like this as that you sent me as possible. Tortle shell. Okay. And for those of you who want to see these pictures, well, media file. This is the base look of our Tortle monk. Yay! Pouch around the neck, prayer beads on the hand, and a kind of monkly, well, I guess it'd be more of a sash than a robe. Yeah. Oh yeah, and a sitar on the back. Can't forget the sitar. Now, would you prefer the Japanese style or the Chinese style? Because they're similar instruments with different detail appearances. And I can go ahead and burn. Also, one final thing. And hello, good game hunters. If possible, can you tell me which of these bases you would want? I don't think you want this one right here because it's technological plates, or the diamond plate on the far left over here. Oh, it's supposed to be a stone? Okay, it looks like where you keep your money pouch or something. But yeah, we like there's cobblestones, mystic tile, a plain flat base, rocks, planks, and grass. Get soda. The tile. Okay, so the right center on this one with the hexagon and square and triangle shaped engraved tiles. Okay. All right. Now, excuse me. By the way, this is Shinju. Yes, this is where she sleeps, right beside me. She's 12 and a half years old. So, yeah, she sleeps quite often. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and... This is the basic geometry that I use. Now, to turn him into a turtle, it's going to take a lot of work. So we're going to expand from selected. This gives me access to all of the body parts, like the forearm. It's right here. Now we're going to need to make the hips a little bit wider, just because we need to make the legs able to come out with a gap between them from the shell. The limbs will be made thicker in ZBrush, but they just from the excuse me, hiccups. Just from the picture you've sent, the neck would be a lot longer. This part right in here will probably be part of the shell and not part of the figure, so the neck will be longer. The hands will be larger, but the fingers shorter. And the same thing goes with and the toes will be sculpted onto the foot. So we go back to Dad's Studio. Now, his legs are going to be a lot shorter, so we're going to select the thigh, shin on both sides. We go up here to all and Y scale down a bit, and hit Control D to drop it. And we're going to raise that neck a lot longer. Y scale. And let's again look at compare the torso with where it is here. Okay, we need to make those hands, or at least we need to make the hands broader. So we're going to use a Z scale. Actually, we need to do that with the fingers as well. The fingers will be shorter but broader. Okay. There we go. Now we're going to select the fingers and make them shorter. We'll thicken the wrists in ZBrush. One other thing we're going to do while I'm looking at it is because of the way the hands are created, I'm going to make them kind of thinner that way, just so that they'll bend better. The feet and toes are going to be shorter and wider. So we're going to Z scale them and X scale. Actually, we need to make them bigger overall, so yeah, that's a bit too much, so let's drop the X scale a bit and drop the scale a bit. Yeah. Now, this is our basic geometry that we're going to now go totally mangle in ZBrush. So, what we do, File, oh wait, I forgot one other thing. The basic male has a couple of things that we need to do first. Under mesh smoothing, under mesh resolution, we need to go from high to base. You saw how it suddenly jumped? Let me show you what exactly it does. Right now, you can see the geometry with those black and white lines, with those black lines, right? Let's see. Well, we gotta wait a second, catch up. Yeah, you can see it. So, when it's on high resolution, you may or may not be able to see it's got a second layer of black lines dividing up those and causing some of them to curve, like right in here. Well, we want it on the base resolution. We're going to export this, File, Export, and we're going to put this under Blend Shapes, just because I need to do it. New BS, Tortle. Now you notice that I've got it at 100% scale. Gotta always remember that, accept. Then I'm going to edit figure, zero figure. Or, yeah. So this takes us back to the human. That's gonna be, we're gonna be coming back to that in a second. But as for now, we need to come in here. We're going to import from Blend Shapes, New BS, Tortle. And we draw in that Tortle. Now what we need to do, the body's not going to be our biggest goal here. The head is going to be the most difficult part. Now the thing is, we need to be careful, because we don't ever want to change the resolution. We don't want to remove or add polygons, because that'll change the order. When you create a morph, what you're doing is you're moving the vertexes. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to make the mouse a little bit bigger. I'm going to inflate. I'm also going to hit X so that we can do it perfectly mirrored. Reduce smoothing to about 10, and we're going to smooth out the chest because we don't need that detail. That's going to be covered by the shell. Same thing with under the neck. Now, I has on my from my tablet, I have my stylus in its green lantern holder, and what we're going to do, we're going to just start thickening with the inflate brush the wrists and the forearms to try and make them a bit more like the flippers that we see in that picture. Well, I shouldn't say flippers, not so much flippers as they are just, you know, it's a smooth blend into the hands. We're going to also inflate the backs of the hands and the fingers just a little bit, and the thumb just a little bit, especially down back here. Okay. Then we're also going to go ahead and inflate up where the legs meet the feet. Just a bit, and then we're going to smooth the backs of the heels so it goes under a little bit. Now, smoothing the intensity even lower and shrinking it, we're going to smooth this area right here where it turns into an ankle bone. We want it a bit more of a smooth transition. The details in the toes we're not going to worry about on this because that's going to come when we actually sculpt the character. Now, again, we look at our reference and we see that the tops of his legs are thinner than this. So let's turn that back up to, yeah, about 14. And we're going to thin out the tops of the legs. And it's going to include the back, and yes, he's going to lose his butt. And we're going to kind of thicken it down here a bit. Blend it a bit just to make it smooth into one surface, so to speak. Now, for the most part, that's the body. Most of this over here will be covered by the shell. And we need to make that neck a lot thinner. So, we're going to go back to inflate. We're going to go to subtract. I'm going to use Control-Shift to select just the neck so we can zoom in and focus on it. And we're going to very carefully deflate the neck, because he's also got a long thin neck underneath the shell, at least. And then we're going to smooth it just a little just to make it more even. Alright, now frame out. We're now going to zoom in on the head, and what we're going to do here, pull up this. Okay, his eyes, there's not enough geometry to really pull off that look, but we can try. The first thing that's going to happen is we're going to smooth out the ears. Just by holding shift and running over those ears, they slowly fade away to almost nothing, and making it a smaller allows us to smooth out those last little bits. And it gets rid of the presence of the ears. Now, you can see that the geometry is still there. Right in here. But when we turn it off, and zoom out, it just looks like a smooth head. Now, we also need to go ahead and we need to make the mouth. Well, the image that was given to us, it's not so much a beak as much as, you know, it's... We're going to go ahead and make the mouth bigger and smooth away the nose. And the sides of the mouth and the chin. And now we're going to start working with move. Making this bigger. I'm going to start by just doing the overall head shape. Now we're going to shrink the mouse to kind of make it a bit wider. The eyes are the last thing we're going to really worry about. It's too narrow right now, so we need to make it make the whole head wider. So we're going to grab this brush all the way up that big, and we're going to make the head wider. And from the back as well. You can see already it looks a lot more like a turtle than it does a human, but we still get to do the mouth, the nostrils, and the eyes. Again, expressions like smile will be at the tail end when we actually sculpt the individual figure. Now, we need to erase the brow here. And now we're going to move the eyes. And this is going to be a bit tricky, because what we got to do is we got to not just move it in one direction, but we got to basically rotate it. So, go ahead and from the back, we're going to pull the back of the eye to about there. And I'm going to come up to the front. We're going to pull it to here. Pull apart the head there, and then pull the eye back like that. So it's still got binocular vision, but it's more on the side of the head. Okay, we now have pretty much the position of the eye. We need to move the position of the sinuses, and then sculpt, then smooth and sculpt them in. So now we'll come under here, and the eye socket needs to come out and back. And then we need to smooth it a bit, and that automatically rounds out that eye, as well as helping us smooth out the head in general. Now, I'm going to make the bottom of the head a little bit wider and the top of the head a little bit narrower. Shrink the mouse, and we're going to go from here back to inflate, but we're going to do it to subtract still. We're going to increase it a little bit more, and we're going to turn what was the side of the nose into sinuses, and then smooth it just a little. Go back to move, and once again we're going to pull this up like this, so that the sinuses end up between the eyes the way they are in the reference. Then we're going to pull out to the side, starting from here. Then smooth it just a little bit. And then just a little bit here. Now I'm going to shrink the mouse quite a bit. I'm going to get to where I can just barely see this vertex right here. And drag it in deeply. That is our actual nostril. The rest of it is there. Now going back to move. A lot of this is trial and error shaping until it looks like what you're wanting. We want it to be a really thin. We now have also created a problem with this right here. We frame out. I'm thinking the head size might be a bit much. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this mouse a lot bigger and a lot more focused. Let's shrink it down a bit. And I'm going to the magnify brush. Magnify. And I'm going to select right here. Oh, no. Subtract. No, that's not doing it. Okay. We're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. Shrink the mouse back down. And select polygons. Deselect here. Oh. Deselect here. And there. No. Okay. Now, going to masking, inverse, deformation, size. Shrink it. And then going to offset Y. And then we need to offset in Z as well. There. And there we go. We have the basic geometry for the Tortle. Well, they are closer to the sides. I just kept it more for the fact that you are going to kind of need binocular vision, but we'll move them even more to the sides if you want. Let's bring this focal shift back to 0. And we're going to, actually, let's make sure we have, put out a bit, and back a bit. Out. You still have binocular vision, but they're way off onto the sides of the head. Now I'm going to shrink this mouse a lot and smooth out where the brows are, so that I can bring this back into a more shape that we saw before. So and just a little bit of smoothing right here. Yeah, there we go. We also need to get rid of lips because Tortles don't have lips. So we're just going to smooth, or increase the intensity, and we're going to smooth underneath the lips. And then we're going back to inflate. We're going to make it bigger, and we're going to very low start inflating underneath until it's an even blend. Until the whole thing is even. And we're going to do the same thing here. just to try and bring the lips together, or closed mouth. And we hit one last time with a smooth. And that is our basic low polygon geometry. Is that better? I need to just real quick, a little bit here, just a little bit of smoothing, just to make for rigging purposes. It needs to, the smoother these polygons are, the better. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to export it back as tortle.obj. Just like this, from the tool menu, not from the 3D Print Hub plugin. Now we go to Daz Studio, back to him. You see he still looks human. Well, we click this button right here, Morph Loader. You're going to choose a file, blend shapes. Actually, no, we need to use Morph Loader Pro, because I forgot they made some changes. Choose Morph Files, Tortle. Now under here, there's some things that you won't have because I do work with Daz, but reverse deformations right here. Reverse deformations is yes. Property group, we want to change it to races. And delta tolerance, we want to add in a couple more zeros. What that means is the way it remembers this morph is not the shape, but what vertexes went in what direction, how far. And you know, if it only moved a tiny amount, it might skip it if it's below that resistance. So we click accept. Now when we go to races, the Tortle is there, but oh look, you can go negative Tortle, and that doesn't look good, does it? So what do you think? Think you could make a figure with negative Tortle? I don't. So we go up here, and there's, oh, let me go ahead and hide my personal webcam so you can see what I'm doing. This is the Tortle dial. When we go negative Tortle, he turns into that. When we go positive Tortle, there he goes. Now, Darky, how tall on average are Tortles? I don't have the book that has them. Are they taller or shorter than humans on the average? Well, while I'm waiting on YouTube lag, this little gear here under parameter settings, we want to change minimum, which is right here, to 0. Because for the most part, there's no time you'll ever want below 0 for a Tortle morph. Okay, so they're about the same height as humans. Okay. So what we do now with this Tortle morph, if we go and look at the bones on a normal human figure, here they are. You can see these little diamond shapes. When I use, for example, let's say a gnome, you see how they shrink and move with the figure. Well, right now, if I did it with the Tortle, they don't move with it. If If I tried to move the turtle's upper arm, it does that. That's not good. So what we do is we go back up here and we go to Tool Settings. Right click, Edit, Adjust Rigging to Shape. That's very important right there. I click that and it brings me this little window here. I'll make it bigger so you can see it. Everything that's been modified, or that will be modified. And I usually adjust orientation too. Accept. And hey, look, the bones move to fit him. And we can see that the brow bones are in the right place. The mouth bone is in the right place. Now, that's not the end of it. We now go to Property Hierarchy. These tabs you can add by clicking right-clicking the side and go to Add Pane. It'd be Property Hierarchy. I already have it on here, so it's not in my list. But what we do is we go to Parameters. And so we can see everything. Let's drag that over. And we scroll down until we see Tortle. Now we right click and go to ERC Freeze. ERC means Enhanced Remote Control. It basically means the position and other elements of the bones are being controlled by this morph, by this blend shape. We click on it and it tells us everything that has changed from the base figure. And we click Accept. And we go back and we check there and we can still see the bones present. But now when we go to our Tortle and we go back to human, the bones move with the morph. We go ahead and we set it to 0 and go back to that. File. Save as Support Asset Morph Assets. In my case, it says vendor name Valendar, that's me. Product name, exclamation point, miniatures. I then click on the arrow here, go to races, and look for the turtle. Click, accept. And now you've got it's very important that you zero that morph out. Otherwise, every time I load in this figure, it'll look like that. Now, since we're making a Tortle miniature, we're going to leave it here for right now. And we're going to go make his shell. And that shell we're going to make in 3D Studio Max. I'm also going to go ahead and turn my camera back on. Yay! Now what I'm about to do can be done in almost any similar program, whether it's this, whether it's Blender, whether it's Maya, whether it any polygon modeler. Meshes, broadcast mini, no, not broadcast, blend shapes, because we're loading in that Tortle morph that we made. The sole purpose is being scale and proportion. Scale not being intentionally pun. We're going to make it kind of this shade and object color. Something bright enough that when I don't have it selected, you can easily see it. I'm going to select it. Down here, show frozen in gray, I'm going to uncheck that and then I'm going to freeze it. There. Now we have just basically a silhouette to work from, and then down here in the bottom, the shape to work from as I make the shell. Soda. Now, we're going to look at the shell again. And we're going to see that, for the most part, the back of the shell, just like that, is mostly the top fragment of the sphere chopped and then kind of just moved a little bit. So we're going to start the back of the shell with a big sphere. It's going to be a really big sphere because only the back portion of it will end up being the actual shell. And so now we're going to change this from 32 to 40. Editable poly. And now we're going to select this edge. Loop and split. Now I can select this whole section of the sphere and delete it. And you can see what we're getting ready to work with for the actual shell. Let me go ahead to a back view so I can select some of these. I'm going to hide the body. I'm going to select every other. Well, first of all, let's go ahead and move it to an X of 0 so it's mirrored. I'm going to select every other line here so that I can just simply remove them and make this a little bit more even polygon distribution. I then hit loop, and as you can see, they're there. Control backspace, and there. That's better polygon distribution. Turn around so we can see the back of it. And yes, it's blue. Now, I'm thinking that it's not deep enough a dish. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the polygon, the vertexes. We're going to deepen it, just to kind of exaggerate the depth. Excuse me, the depth of the shell. The next thing we need to do is we need to make that shape. It's more of an egg shape than a sphere. So we're going to what's called an FFD box. Basically, as we modify this box, it modifies the overall shape. And I'm thinking it's also a little bit too high up here and a little bit too wide overall. And let's bring this up because that's too low. And I'm thinking we also still need to go ahead and make it a little bit deeper. So let's take these and pull it out a bit. And we're also going to drop down the shell a bit towards the back. Well, let's look at the regular turtle shell. It's more even. Let's bring it up back a little bit, but we also need to make it a little bit more ridged towards the center. So to take care of that, I'm going to collapse it so that becomes the default shape now, but I'm going to switch to FFD 3x3. This gives me a little bit more control. And it does so I can do things like pulling this a bit more out so it's a bit more ridged in the center without losing too much on the sides. And now I'm going to select these right here, just those vertexes. We're going to come back a little bit, and looks like Shinju is going for dinner. Yeah, Shinju, thank you for knocking those over. Yay. And then this center one right there, we're going to pull back even more. We're also going to do the same thing for these 4 vertexes. We're going to pull them back. And then this down here, we're going to simply scale in. And these are going to scale in just a little. And these are going to scale in a little. Then we're going to select these, scale them down, so that we maintain our overall size and shape of the shell. These down a little bit and in a little bit. Then we're going to select that vertex and this vertex and pull them back. What this does is it allows us to go ahead and bring the shell forward a bit, just a bit, and we now have the back of the shell. The next step is to select the edges and then deselect the edges where the joints are. And now we're going to editable mesh. We're going to extrude them out a little bit. And the purpose for this is this will form, let's grab it here. Oh, yeah. Gotta go back to editable poly for this. Gonna shrink them in a bit closer to the body. And then we're gonna select that and pull it down. Gonna select these. We're gonna shrink them in a bit more. Pull them up a bit. This one and this one will get a little bit narrower. Good girl. Good girl. And these two will come in a little bit. Oh, let me make sure I'm selecting the right one here. Yeah, that one and that one will come in just a little, and these two will actually come out a little bit and down a little bit. And then finally these are just going to shrink and come up near the crotch. Oh, just come straight up. Okay. Now we're going to go back to editable mesh, extrude them again, and this time we're going to come out until it's beyond the length of the body, so that we can actually select these properly. Okay, the shoulder bits, going to come back to about here. The torso bits are going to kind of blend in with where they should be on here. And the crotch is actually going to come up a bit. Make sure it doesn't. It's also going to get a little bit, we're also going to get even smaller here. You can already see what's going to happen here, can't you? What's going to happen is I'm going to link these. First, I'm going to deselect the ones on the top and the bottom. And I'm going to use what's called a bridge. and we want at least 3 segments. I select here. Gotta go back to back to the front view and deselect the sides and bring it up to about there. Select these two and pull them out a bit. And then select these two, pull them down and shrink them a little. Then I select that one and I hit ring because I needed to have had one more centerpiece. Yeah. Now go pull these kind of close to there. Select them, zoom in, and we can see that this needs to get wider, or actually these need to get narrower. We select all 3 of them. Let's move these guys, well, shrink these guys a bit more and then move them back. It should be 6 vertices selected. We hit weld and they becomes 3 as we have just fused the bottom to the chest. Now it doesn't look right now because we're going to be taking this into ZBrush here in a minute. We're going to select these 2 vertexes. We're going to bring them up a little because it's going to go under the underarm. And let's go ahead and select him and bring him back up this way. Now, I click that edge and this edge. And I bridge them with only 1 segment. Then I do the same with the other side. Zoom out. The shape is there, but we're going to need to sculpt it into a better... the base geometry is there, but I'm going to definitely need to sculpt it. Now, the last thing we do is we're going to take each one of these open sections here, and we're going to extrude them in until they're inside the body. Shrink, extrude them once more, go back to editable poly, and we're going to collapse it. That turns it into a single point. We're going to do the same thing to the other 4 holes. We're going to do these at the same time. So it's going to take us a couple extra steps here. And we collapse. So we have our holes for the arms and the holes for the head. And then, oh, let me do one last thing real quick. Smooth. That's all. Now we're going to select those. Editable mesh. Extrude. I'm going to pull them up. And then we're going to editable poly. Shrink them. Back to editable mesh. Extrude. Back to editable poly. And collapse. Now, the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to select the edges that are on the inside of the shield and hit ring. Okay, that's not going to give us anything. Let's select that and loop. I'm going to select all of these practically, because what we're going to end up doing is we're going to sharpen the edge here. That'll make it easier for us to sculpt on. And I missed that. And that's 20 edges, that's what we need, and we're going to chamfer the 0.01. Then we're going to select all of the polygons here. Actually, I know what we're going to do. We're going to select all of those, grow, grow, and then we're going to hide unselected. I'm going to hide the hidden body. Then we're going to back here and we're going to shrink and we're going to hide selected. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select all of these edges that are radiating out. Because what we're going to do is we're going to turn these into a way to sharpen it near the body. And then once we've done that, we're going to take it into ZBrush and refine the shape. Okay, so now we're going to connect to, widen it out a bit, select OK. Then we'll select that one, loop, and now we're going to unhide everything. Now when I hit Mesh Smooth, I unhide our frozen body, we're going to be able to take that in to ZBrush and shape it to fit the Tortle body. Okay, increase the shell depth. Okay, we can do that in ZBrush. We can refine the shape, and we're going to get your input while we're finding the shape. This is just to give us some base geometry to work with. This is going to be under... Actually, no, this is going to be under props, because this is going to be usable for future Tortles as well. Okay. Base Tortle shell. Export. Done. Now we go back to ZBrush, and we're going to Subtool. We're going to append Subtool and import from FreeSculpt Minis props the base Tortle shell. Now we're going to go ahead and subdivide it a lot. Now this is what we're starting with. We're also going to go ahead and Dynamesh it at 512. Now we now need to definitely smooth it out. This whole torso area needs to be smoothed and made thicker and fit better around the shoulders. So we're going to move. Bring it out and around, bring this up. Oh, I forgot to do it X, so it'll apply to everything that we do. Now we need a little bit bigger. Pull it back that way and then pull it back this way. A little bit smaller, pull it back there and down that way. It's already looking a lot better, but we've got some work to do still on the sides here. Just smooth it out. Well, let's turn it back to 100% and smooth it out. Then we're going to kind of pull this out and up a little bit so it's easier for us to pose the legs, and pull that to the side. Now we're going to make the whole thing bigger, and we're going to move it up a little so it's a bit more obvious that it's, yeah. We also need to pull the neck up. Pull this out a bit more. It needs to be broader around the shoulders and overall broader here. I also need to kind of pull it down a little. This will give us a little bit of a ridge down the center, which is actually what we want for this particular type of figure, this species. Now we're going to shrink it a bit and go to inflate. And we're going to inflate on the inside of the shell. And then smooth it out a little bit. Inflate there. Shrink the mouse. Smooth it out here. Move. And we need to move it forward so that he had some mobility in his shoulder. Tortles withdraw into their shells, yeah. So we're looking at it, and the thing is, by tortle withdrawing into their shell, it's something that you really can't do on a miniature, but I can make it look like it's possible. Enlarging the overall size of the inner shell. But I gotta make the openings a bit larger. And so pull up. And we're also going to bring this up to a bit further behind the head. There we go. That's our basic Tortle. Now the thing to remember is I can also make him thicker. So we're now going to subdivide it a couple more times and dynamesh it again. So I can come in and with a smaller brush smooth out these wrinkles right here and that right there. And then the last thing we do is we're going to draw in our basic lines. So we're going to go to, first we're going to start with the orb cracks brush. And with the stroke, click, turn off lazy mouse, excuse me. We're going to start off with the border between the front and the back shells. Shrink it a little bit and smooth out that part right there. And a little bit right there. And then smooth that out. Make it a bit more obvious that it's two separate pieces meeting at the center. Okay. Now, on the belly, we're going to use this one as the main reference. We have a primary plate area here as well. So we're going to sketch that out. Part of the idea is that the parts that aren't part of either this primary front plate or back plate are actually quite flexible to enable things like pulling back into the shell. And I'm going to do a second pass on that, simply because I think it needs to be a bit more distinct. It's not as obvious as the front to back is without it. And let's draw this down. There. Now we're going to shrink the mouse once more, zoom in. We're going to blend only on the inside. And now to re-emphasize that, we're going to the slash brush, going to add, let's drop this down, make it big, and we're going to sharpen the edge of this plate. Okay, that's not enough. Increase that intensity, increase the size. Okay, that's nice. Now we're also going to do something similar, but along the edge here. The edge of the openings for both the neck and the limbs. Okay, now we zoom out. Do you still need more backspace? It's a lot easier to shape things in ZBrush than in most polygon modelers. The last thing we're going to do, if you don't need it, is we're going to draw on the basics of the shell. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and pull up down to that one. And we're going to start with the rim shell, the rim of the shell. And it's very simple. We're just going to shrink this down to about there. Going back to slash, but we're going to subtract. I'm going to increase intensity. And we're going to draw in just basically kind of like the outline of the outer ring. It's going to be a lot more extreme than in reality, because otherwise it won't really carry over well. Okay. Then we're going to come up and just start drawing on where these are. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure I didn't have to make them as perfectly even as the... Yeah. Then we're going to use the move tool. We're going to shrink it down just a bit. We're going to grab the corners and pull them out a bit. Just a bit. Because what we're doing is we're making them look more like scutes, which is what they are. It's like a thicker, heavier shell. More like scutes and less like just divisions. They got that Gamera look. Gamera, friend to all children. Okay, that's the outer ring. Now the next thing that we have, again, just looking at this reference image, we've got a row coming down that's kind of like a slightly bent hexagons, or actually more so. And then we come there's not going to be as many on this as there would be in the real thing, simply because it would make the details too small to print and too small to paint. And we come out, and they come from these corners, and they come out to the edges of the shell. And there we have the back of the shell. That is our Tortle shell. However, it's also 205,000 polygons, which is too much to use in a 3D print. So what we're going to do is first we're going to, once again, we're going to Dynamesh it. That'll rearrange the geometry a bit, but not enough. That's still 228,000. So we go to ZBrush. We click the button on ZBrush and it'll drop this down. If it's around 30 to 50,000, it'll be fine. Oh, 23,000. That came out beautifully. I mean, I click on line fill and you can see the polygons actually follow the flow of those shells pretty good. So that is our shell. We're going to export this back to the basic Tortle shell. Yes. We're then going up to document and new document. I'll explain why, because now that we've gotten that done, file, import from props, basic Tortle shell, accept, and we're going to parent it to the hips. Now we go into content library and come on. we're going to save it. File, save as, support asset, figure prop assets. As we're going to use a Z because it's a, just to keep it down last in the list, Tortle shell. Once again, we're saving it as product name miniatures, accept. And now it's right there. Well, you probably can't see it again because of my camera. So let me hide the camera. It's right here in the directory. Yay. And this is our basic Tortle. It took me 1 hour and 15 minutes to do that. Which means I now have to make the entire rest of the figure in about 45 minutes. Oh well, it'll take me longer than that. Alright, so. Oh, wrong thing to click. I meant to click that. The next thing is, I know that how... Is that the basic pose that you want him in as well? And will he have a staff? Is this your pose? Because what's going to happen is when I take him into ZBrush after doing this, then I'll be morphing the shell to fit him a little bit better around how he is positioned. So, we're going to start off, look at the body. He's ever so slightly tilted to one side, which is a good thing because you always want to be slightly tilted. Well, first let's bend him just a little bit forward. And then he'll be slightly to this side. And then this leg will twist side to side, bend a little bit here, and I need to twist his leg even more. Now I'm going to have his foot flat on the ground because otherwise, with only a toe touching, it's not going to do well. Okay, that's going to be a problem. Again, I'll be bending the shell to fit that pose. It's just that his hips are a lot higher than I expected. Taking a full step forward takes it into that rigid plate. I'm going to bring it to here. Okay, so he's not going to be holding it. It's going to be attached to his sarong. Okay. Now, because of the way I've created this, I can't quite make the fingers move individually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat. I'm going to start the bend and then twist the fingers like that. Again, that's something I'm going to tweak and detail in the actual sculpting. I'll detail that in a minute. And now the other arm is just kind of up and out. You'll also notice that I did not turn off 3D Studio Max. That's because I still need to make the sitar. And now twist it to the side. I'm going to bend back a bit into the side at the neck, but then it's going to bend forward and to the other side at the head. Oh, his wood is actually coming forward. And we are going to now use front view. I'm going to have to move this as close to, let's take the hip. We're going to side to side it a little bit more than he is in the image, just to give him a little bit more dynamism. We're going to have to move his foot here. I think bending it a bit more helps. Like I said, we're going to be adjusting these apertures to fit his actual pose. We're also going to be adjusting expression. For example, right now, opening the mouth a little is almost a smile. Now for the sarong is not so right. What we have to do is I have a simple drapery item. And I'm going to have to see what I can do about trying to wrap that around him or her in multiple variants. So, front view, move it up to about there. Right view, to about where the waist is. Yeah, it's a little too wide right now, so File, expand from selected. We're going to select each of the individual parts, make them a little bit narrower. Then we're going to rotate it that way. And now we're going to start doing them again. We're going to be shaping this to fit the shell better when it comes time. This isn't how I make my normal clothing, but this is not normal clothing. And it's not a normal subject. Okay, that's part of it. But there's more coming around the other side and then a little bit dangling. So we're going to need to load in a second set of drapery. Let's close that one. And parent it to the turtle shell. And load in another one. I'm going to... Alright. The base drapery scale is 81.8. We want to try and keep it roughly similar, so 81.8. Now, the individual pieces are 70.3%. So, now, go to the front view, and we're going to move it to here. And then from the right view, we're going to move it back. Then, I'm going to bring it around like that, and lift it up a bit more, and back a bit like that. Actually, what we need to do is we need to move this to here so that we can have it come around and have the dangly bit left over. And this should position at least. Okay, now Actually, let's... Yeah. And sorry if I'm being a little quiet. I'm just trying to concentrate on getting this bending properly. And then finally this one's going to side to side down a bit. The rest of these are going to be a lot shorter, so they're going to be a lot. There. And that will end up being turned into the sarong. Again, that's just base geometry, like the shell was. And now, the next thing I need to do is I need to pop here so I can open up a Google image search without having to show my base current screen, which is just my email. Don't want to show that. Okay. Now I need you to comment something if you can, Darky Flame. Is this the type of sitar you are referring to? The other option is a shamisen. Third image, a shamisen. Okay. That's actually not too hard to make. Alright, so what we do is we go back into Bing 3D Studio Max. Do I still have my... Yeah, I do. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Just because all we need this in here for is approximate height. Now, box. And what we need to do now is we need to make it 3 segments and 2. Hide frozen. And we are going to select by vertex. And we're going to bring it forward. The reason for this is now, when we hit Mesh Smooth a couple times, it's rounded a bit. And we can select these and bring it down to there. Does that look like a good shape? Okay, no, it's not. It's more square than that. Okay, so we need to go back to Double Poly, select by vertex, narrow, drop that mesh smooth, select the vertexes here, and bring them in a bit, and let's bring it down. Then we need to select these lines and click loop and chamfer too much. Chamfer a little bit. Just cutting the corners, just shaving those corners. So now when we hit mesh smooth, when we pull out, this is the shape that we get, which actually does look a lot more like that. Although without the, it doesn't have the knee part. There we go. That's a much better ability to see what we're doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to need to add in one more set of edges to make this even sharper all the way down. The more edges something has, the less it'll get altered during a mesh smooth. And this is what we end up with for the box, which is that too deep. Nope, wrong thing. Yeah, it's a little too deep. So let's select these vertexes and bring it in a little. Yeah, about there. Now, it's not going to have entirely accurate proportions simply because we don't want it to shatter when it prints. So the neck will be a good bit thicker than it really would be. Actually, we need to make this a little bit bigger in general. And move it to an X of 0, so it's centered. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make another box for the length of the shaft. And it's going to be 1 by 1 by 1. Well, actually 3 by 1 by 1. It's going to look a lot thicker than the real thing, like I said. Now, convertible poly. Select this and move it up to here. And select this whole thing and move it up to here. And then we're going to hide frozen objects. Hide the bodies! Hide the bodies! And we see... yeah, a lot of the detail is not going to be there, especially not yet, simply because it would make it very, very fragile. It would shatter the first time I pulled it off the bed. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to make it as square as possible. And then we're going to move it to an X of 0 because we need it centered. Then we're going to select these edges. We're going to chamfer them. Okay. Now we select that and we're going to bring it up until it touches the ends here. We now have 8 vertexes selected. We hit weld and it's only 4. We're going to select here again, connect, we're going to slide it up until it's just below, and then we're going to select these. We're going to connect and we're going to select it so it's 2 edges, make them wider. Okay. Now when I hit mesh smooth, Yeah, that'll work. All I got to do is add on one last. Yeah, that's all I need. Mesh smooth 1, 2. Okay. Collapse all. And now I'm going to select the front half of it. Collapse it, just flatten it just a little. And then bring it forward so that it's like there. And then there's three keys. 2 on the right, 1 on the left, as we're looking at it. So those keys are going to also be rather thick cylinders. Just for the sake of making something that will print well and not be fragile. That might be a little too thick, so let's bring it down. Might be a little too high. There. Copy to there. Then we're going to copy one to up here and then rotate it 180 degrees. This is the base geometry for the sitar. No, for the, well, technically it's a samisen. So now we're going to just select it. Oh wait, I gotta take this, convert it to editable poly, attach these two, and then select those and select those. Connect 299. And just for the sake of making them stay sharp, then once more, and then mesh smooth 2. I'm going to take this and export it, export selected, as samisen. Export. Done. Okay. So now we go back into here. Just for the sake of making it clearly obvious that the drapery is separate, let's go ahead and go into surfaces and make this color orange. And now we're going to File, Import, samisen. Accept. This is going to rotate 180 degrees this way, because it's going to be on his back. Am I correct? It's on her back? Diagonal. Okay. Kind of like that, although a little bit. Yeah. And on which side is his or her staff stuffed into her drapery? Left or right? Right. In the front or just behind the edge of the shell? It would kind of have to be just behind the edge, because otherwise it would be sticking her in the underarm every time she moved her arm. So it would be right here. So we're going to create a, where is it? New primitive, cylinder, length, accept. Now let's take that and have it selected. Go back, just so we can make it the appropriate size. Okay, edit, copy selected items, create, primitive, accept. Paste to selected items, and then X translate it to the left just a little bit. Oh, too much, there we go. Okay, now we parent them together, and from the back, let's go ahead and get them into roughly position. Okay, and there we go. How's that? Before we actually sculpt the details into the clothing and the figure and the skin and the shell and all that. Yeah. And there goes Shinju off for food again. What? It is also 9:47. That's a lot we got done. Oh, Carlton? Ugh. Carlton, do you mind? You know better than to jump onto the tablet. Say hi to Carlton, peeps. Oh. Carlton. What am I going to do with you, little buddy? Now, you're about to see why they call him the Velcro Kitty. Come on, let's get you. No, no. Yeah. He doesn't like being put down. But I gotta do it. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start hiding objects. The reason for this is because we need to export them individually. So File, Export. This is going into Broadcast Miniatures New. Now, you said her name was Kameko. Little Turtle? Really? Really? Kameko body. Accept. Hide the body. Oh, no, not the abdomen, the entire body. Make the shell visible. I said hide the body. Yeah, thank you. File. Export. Kameko shell. Accept. Then we hide the shell and make the drapery visible. File. Export. Kameko drapery. Accept. And then these are going to be loaded in as Kameko props. Actually, let me make sure that I don't have... Okay, good. Export Kameko props. Accept. Okay, so now we come back up to here, and we're going to import from Broadcast Miniatures New Kameko body, and draw her into this. What? No. Oh, okay, good. We select that and delete. Alright, there we go. Kameko body. Append polymesh. Import Kameko shell. Append polymesh. Import Kameko drapery. Append polymesh. Select and import Kameko props. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to hide the drapery and the props and go to the shell. Because we need to... Actually, let's go ahead and go to the body. Let's do the body first. We are going to subdivide her a couple times. But before we do anything with it, we're going to tweak under the palm here with a bit of an inflate. Try and smooth that out because the rigging is basic. Then we're going to smooth it. Oh, way too strong. About right here. Smooth that out. Also going to inflate here to emphasize that bone that's in here, in this part of the hand. And then we're going to inflate the finger because it's starting to flatten out from the twisting. Now, before I do anything with the shell, is she smiling or not? Okay, so we're going to use the move tool I'm just gonna kind of, well, turn off X. Gonna kind of bring the mouth up a bit. And Shinju is back. Oh. There we go. What are you doing, baby girl? Besides begging for pettins. She's 12 and a half. Good girl. Okay. That's pretty much a smiley turtle. So we're now going to dynamesh her at 768 and a blur of 0, because that'll help redistribute the polygons. But now we go to the shell, and now we're going to have to do a lot of tweaking of the geometry. Pull this. Oh, actually I need to make it transparent so I can grab this and pull it up for where her thigh is. Probably come out a little and bring this up a little. Bring this over, bring this down a bit, just a bit, mostly in the flexible section, and also bring this up. Then this down here a little, and this up a little, then this over here and here. Okay, it didn't affect our... And the shell is in a little bit better shape than it was when we brought it in. We're just going to kind of even it out here and straighten this out, make it look like it's mostly the flexible stuff moving. Yes, we know that the flexible stuff wasn't the only stuff that moved, but as long as it looks right, it doesn't matter. And then we smooth that out. And then we're going to subdivide it a couple times until it looks really nice and smooth. Okay, 1.13 it'll do. Now comes that. The drapery. This is going to be the biggest headache. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to use move to drag it out beyond the edges of the shell where it's otherwise poking through the shell. I'm also going to bring it closer to the shell here so that it's not hanging out. Okay. There we go. Pull it out here a bit. And let's pull it out here a little bit and out here. Now, that's the basic shape. This is all going to get handled with the move topological brush. This only moves what's directly physically connected to what you're manipulating. So for example, this will come out to here. This will go in. And we're going to end up making a knot right here. This will come down and across to here. And then moving it in and bringing the bottom out so that it's blending in down here but overlapping above. We can then, nope. Okay, and then okay, now what we do, frame out, we go to subdivide it until it's smooth, delete lower, and we dynamesh it as it is, right there. Now, shrink this button. Let's pull up the image. Okay, so there's at least one knot up in here. What we're going to do first is we're going to smooth all of this together. And then we're going to cut in the knots and the wrinkles and all of that. Because this is now one solid piece of geometry that can be sculpted. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to start with the slash. No, Ralph. No. Back! This is Ralph. He looks just like Carlton, except he's got a paler belly and he's got a red collar. He's also a bit more rambunctious. Okay, we're going to start off. Look here. So it's coming in. Okay, we're going to have a kind of almost a triangular knot right here. And it overlaps on itself here. And it's coming out from here to there. Let's move that belly out a little bit more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Move that part, the belly part out a bit more. And let's go back to slash. And which side comes in? Yeah, comes from here. And to that. That's the basic shape of that knot, whereas down here it's basically just coming in from above. No, it'd be coming in this way. Let's go ahead and just kind of bring it like that. Then we go back to move, make it bigger, move it out from the back a bit, make it smaller, and pull it out this way so it's like looking like it's wrapping around. Let's make sure we hit all of these things to smooth it. Oh, back to slash, and we come in from here. And then we move it back in like
this. We're going to pull this almost under. Now it's all into shaping that sarong, or monk's sash, or whatever you want to call it. And now we're going to shrink the mouse again, and this time we're going to smooth out down here and down here. And we're going to use slash positive, a lot lower intensity. We're going to draw on, actually we need a lot bigger intensity than that. I'm going to pull it around like this to really emphasize that it's going over and around the rest of it. There we go. And now let's use move to get this back into a more even shape. There we go. And smooth it here and here. Now we bring around, and we're going to shrink the mouse and smooth here as it goes underneath everything, and here. Going back to slash, and we're going to redraw this line just to re-emphasize it. And then with an add, we're going to sketch down this way to re-emphasize its presence. Dig in right there, and then now we're going to subdivide it a lot, because the next few things we really need to have them be a lot higher polygon count. And whoop. There we go. Now we add wrinkles, because we have the basic shape of the sarong. So I take a standard brush. I'm going to turn off lazy mouse. I'm going to reduce the strength to about 11, and make it a little bit, no, that's about right. And I'm just going to draw in, no, that's not quite enough. Yeah, I'm just going to draw in lines coming down. Okay. Then we're going to come out from up here and come down from here. And then just another one coming up from here. Down here. What are y'all doing, furball? Oh, they're squabbling. Eh. They're brothers. They always do that. Did he just jump? No, he didn't. Not yet. Okay. This is the first time I've had all three cats try to deal with the Okay, now we go to Z sub and a 14, 11. Let's go to Z add and a 9 or 8, and we're going to just mark on the top of each of these wrinkles. In this case, I got to hit it a couple times. And come down here and here. And this second one we're going to hit the repeat key a couple times to make it nice and sharp. This comes up there, come up from here and from here. And come back around this way and here. Then we're going to go back to Z sub. And we're just going to sharpen some of these, well, make it stronger. We're going to sharpen, so that's too much. Sharpen some of these wrinkles by going in between them. I hate it when it does that. Saves the file while I'm trying to actually work on it. And it almost never saves it well enough to actually be recoverable, so I'm wondering why even bother. And again, I don't have as many crashes as I used to. Okay. Now we go back to the subtools, we turn on our props. We subdivide them. Actually, no, we don't want to subdivide them because I forgot to sharpen that. So what we're going to do, we're going to dynamesh it at 256. Now we're going to subdivide it. Yeah. And one thing we're going to do, we're going to come up here. Now, did you say that they're connected with a cord? Because that kind of makes sense to me. Use inflate, intensity of about 30, and shrink the mouse down to about there. And we're just going to draw that. And then that's a little cord that connects the two. Now, while we have this here, we need to take the drapery, move, make it bigger. Not quite that big, but we need to bring it over there. So it's stuck in the sarong. And then the only thing to do on this, because of the scale that we're working with, is to go ahead and draw a line across here and then sharpen the ends, make it rectangular by removing the sides. Then we go to masking, inverse, deformation, actually masking, blur mask, deformation, inflate negative, basically to give us the little depression for the sound hole. Now, the last thing left to do is to add in some minor scales on the body itself. Okay. Now we're not going to do a lot of scales. We're only going to do the largest ones and in areas that are otherwise open, empty space. Let me check. Do I need... Got to be a little bit larger than that, so... No, not quite enough. Let's bring it back up to 60. Yeah. There we go. Just going to draw some little dots on the back of the head. And that's... coming up to the top. This is where the pretty much the larger scales would be. And a couple coming down to the jaw, maybe. And a couple on the back of the forearm. It may not be where the larger scales really are on a turtle, but it's artistic license. It feels better, and you'll see in like a little cartoons they'll be like that thing before we add the base. And okay. And then we're going to put a couple on the outside. Oh, we also have to sculpt your feet. On the outside of the calf. Again, not so much because that's where they really would be, but because it would help break up the shape of the skin there and add some interest to the lower portion of the figure. Visual interest, I mean. And then they'll come around the back here a little. Now, for your feet, we're going to have to worry about this foot down here later. But for right now, we're going to smooth out the bottom of this one. And then I'm going to use the move tool. And we're going to grab a big toe and bring it out. Grab this toe, bring it out. Grab this toe, bring it out. And grab this toe, bring it out. Then we're going to use the inflate tool. A little bit smaller. You just kind of... Whoa, way too large. Just going to kind of draw over the top of it. Without getting onto the one foot behind it, we're going to draw over top of it and just kind of add in a bit more toe. And blend it there. We're still going to go ahead and draw the inflation. We're just not going to bother with moving them out until we load in the base, because we're going to have to overlap with part of the foot here. Okay, frame up, turn off invisibility. Okay, now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add in a little bit of knuckles. The only knuckles we're going to add, because these aren't human hands or human-like hands, are the ones on the back of the hand, back of the palm. It's going to be one there, 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 with a little bit of faint sliding back where the tendons would be. And and smooth. We also need to go ahead and kind of inflate the palm of this hand, because it doesn't have, it's got things visible. And smooth it just a bit. Frame. Zoom out. And so now the last thing to do is add in the base. Oh yeah, the medallion. Sorry, I am sorry. Let me get... That's something else to throw into 3D Studio Max. Alright, so let's go 3D Studio Max, delete this, unhide the, well yeah, hide the body, unfreeze it, delete, import, broadcast miniatures, new, Kamako body, file, import Kamako shell. Okay, we're going to use this as a guide while we make the medallion. Now, the medallion, as we can see, I still think it looks kind of pouch-like, but it's mostly teardrop shaped. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a cylinder. And we're going to draw it here. Going to be larger than you drew it to make it printable and paintable and seeable. And then we're going to take these polygons and drag them up, and then these polygons and make them wider. And then when we mesh smooth it, it rounds off to be very similar to what we see here. So what we do need to do is we need to make it a little bit thicker. Excuse me, again, to make it more printable. And I'm going to rotate it to fit on the where it will be. Okay. Let's bring it down a bit because it was down a little bit lower in the drawing. Down about here. And we're going to rotate it sideways because it'll be kind of dangly. Now, we're going to need to rotate it along the red axis. So okay, let's zoom around. Now it's not going to attach the same way because that would leave a very thin connection and gap. We're going to bring this now. We bring this forward and we're going to move every vertex one by one, but before we do this we're going to hide. No, we're not going to hide anything. We need to make this brighter. Okay, so this vertex is right where it needs to be. This one right here needs to be back a little because it needs to be kind of even with this. This one comes forward just a bit. This one goes back until it vanishes in there, so bring it out a little. And we're basically just going to sit here and move vertexes while they're still feasible. Okay, and now we go up to rendering, enable in viewport. And that's a bit too big, so we're going to shrink it to there. Editable poly, and then we mesh smooth it a couple times. Collapse all, select it, and that, and we're going to export it. Into Broadcast Miniatures, New, Comico, Medallion. Okay, now we come back into here. And under Subtool, Append, Playmesh 3D, and we import Comica Medallion. Now, using mostly the Move tool, we're going to put it into position. We're going to make the tool a bit bigger. So we're going to grab the medallion, bring it out to right on top of the thing. And move topological to bring the bring that back in, and we need it as tightly to the rest of the figure as possible. Any gaps tend to be problems, especially if this ever got molded and turned into an actual pewter or mass-produced figure for some reason. And bring this out. There we go. And we're gonna subdivide it a couple times. Okay. Now the last thing to do is we import the bases, the fancy tiled base. And we see a problem that it's way too high. That base is way too high. So we offset it on the Y until it's mostly there we go. That's about where we need it on the Y. Or, come on. Let's go a little bit to the right. Just a little bit. Just to kind of center it under the main body mass frame. And here is Dancing Kamineko. Do you like this? One thing I do need to do, I need to select that and just make sure we're going to make it small so we can make sure it's going to print well. I'm going to inflate it just a little. Yeah, there we go. That should do it. Just to make sure that it's a feasible print, even for people with an FDM printer. Okay. So now, I can put this up. Which means in any second now I'll probably have Carlton. No, not you, Ralph. And I merged down all of them. Until they're all one big piece of geometry. But this is not printable yet. Before it can be printed, I have to Dynamesh it. I hit Dynamesh. Now, theoretically, this can be printed. This is now a single solid surface. But it's also 2 million polygons, which means that most slicers would choke to death on it. So we need to reduce it. So use Decimation Master. And I think with that base, the scales and points custom that I have here, so I click Custom. Now we'll see up here an orange line going across. If it stops before reaching 100%, then it's got issues, and we'll need to do something to tweak just something, because this is a script. It's not a full-on code plugin. So looks like it's gone. It's at 75% by now, and it should take it to about 100,000 and some odd polys, which that's the number right here. And it made it. So let's see how it goes to. 100,000 and how many? $100,330. Now, when we zoom out to about printing size, we can see all of the details, which is what we want. You can even see the scales. You can see the eyes. You can see the patterns in the yeah. This will print well. And now we export to our broadcast miniatures new as simply as Kameko Tortle Monk. And you will see it Wednesday. Right, CJ? Now, I said this at the beginning of the show. I'm going to go ahead and repeat it now that I'm popping to this camera. And that is, there is, if you didn't hear at the beginning, there is something starting today called Minivember. What that means is there will be a challenge every week. There are 4 challenges in all. A race, class, armor, weapon, and background will be posted. And over the course of the next week, just try to sculpt something that you think fits those 5. There is a link right here to the page that has been set up by MakerFun 3D for this little challenge. If you want to sculpt, go ahead and sculpt. You don't have to enter. Just the way you get better at sculpting is by doing more sculpting. That's the only way. Oof. Oof. What was that for, you crazy little fuzz bucket? Yes. Little crazy fireball. I has a Ralph up there. I has a Shinju right there. And I have a Carlton right here. Isn't that right? Funny thing about Carlton is he loves just being held like a baby and then petted in the belly. Most cats, you do this and your hand gets slaughtered. With Carlton, look at him. He's already starting to just lay his head back. Yeah. Don't go to sleep, little buddy. Don't go to sleep. Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, I set you down. There you go. So Mini-Vember. The links there. The links in the Discord, the links on the Facebook page, links on the Reddit. Let's have fun. And CJ and Matt will work out when we're going to do the painting week. So now, as usual, what I'm getting ready to do is I'm going to go ahead and log out. And when I do so, I'm going to hold up my hand. I'm going to count from 5 to 1. When I get to 1, I log out. Now there's 10 seconds or so of lag, so who knows how long it'll be. So it's going to be a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1. And good night.